Hello, my brothers. Good evening and have a great Sunday. But one of the biggest questions surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers right now is whether TJ Watt is ready for a major bounce back season. And after everything that came out of mandatory minicamp, there are several reasons why Steelers fans should be paying very close attention to what could happen with this defense in 2026. The discussion started with a simple idea. If the Steelers improve their play at nose tackle and strengthen their run defense, could that create more opportunities for TJ Watt to return to elite production? Looking at the current situation, there is growing belief that the answer is yes. Even though Watt is no longer the same player physically that he was earlier in his career, he remains one of the most respected defenders in football. His ability against the run is still considered among the best at his position, and he continues to be a dangerous pass rusher whenever he gets favorable situations. The expectation inside the Steelers' defensive structure appears to be that better run defense will create more obvious passing downs, allowing Watt and the rest of the edge rushers to attack quarterbacks more aggressively. A major factor in that discussion is the arrival of Sebastian Joseph Day. There is confidence that his presence can help stabilize the defensive front and improve overall run defense. At the same time, the defensive scheme under Patrick Graham is expected to be more defined and structured when it comes to linebacker responsibilities. That could remove some of the uncertainty that previously existed in run fits and allow the entire defense to play faster. What makes this even more interesting is how the Steelers may deploy their pass rushers this season. There is growing anticipation surrounding packages that could feature Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig on the field together. With Patrick Graham expected to be creative, Watt could be used in a variety of ways through stunts, loops, and movement concepts designed to create confusion for offensive lines. Another major storyline emerging from these discussions is the future of several key young players who could soon become some of the highest paid members of the organization. The Steelers have already shown their willingness to invest in players they believe are part of the long-term foundation, and now attention is turning toward names like Joey Porter Jr. and Darnell Washington. Joey Porter Jr.'s situation is particularly fascinating because his value continues to rise every season. Around the league, elite cornerbacks are commanding massive contracts, and Porter is reaching the point where those conversations become impossible to avoid. The challenge for Pittsburgh is determining exactly where Porter belongs within that market. There is little doubt that Porter views himself as one of the premier young corners in football. His ability in man coverage has become one of his defining strengths, allowing him to match up against top receivers and compete at a very high level. While there are still areas of his game that can continue to develop, particularly compared to some of the league's most complete cornerbacks, there is a strong argument that he already belongs among the better players at his position. That creates an interesting negotiation dynamic. The highest paid cornerbacks in football are now earning enormous salaries, and any future discussions involving Porter are likely to begin with comparisons to those contracts. The Steelers may believe he deserves top 5 money, but determining exactly where that number lands could take time. Unlike some contract situations where both sides quickly arrive at a compromise, this one has the potential to become a longer process because Porter understands his importance to the defense. Elite cover corners are among the most valuable players in today's NFL, and those players know exactly what they are worth. At the same time, Pittsburgh is not completely without leverage. The organization has continued to build depth in the secondary. Players such as Asante Samuel Jr. provide experience, while Brandon Eccles has demonstrated versatility by contributing both outside and inside. Additional depth pieces give the Steelers options, which may allow them to remain patient during negotiations. That doesn't mean they want to move forward without Porter. Quite the opposite. The expectation remains that both sides ultimately want the same outcome, a long-term agreement that keeps one of the franchise's most important young defenders in Pittsburgh for years to come. Interestingly, there is growing belief that another extension could actually happen before Porter's. That player is Darnell Washington. For Steelers fans, Washington has become one of the most unique weapons on the roster. His size, physicality, and versatility make him an extremely difficult matchup for opposing defenses. While his statistics may not always tell the entire story, his impact extends far beyond traditional numbers. Every successful offense needs players who can influence games in multiple ways, and Washington fits that description perfectly. What makes his contract situation different is that negotiations may be more straightforward. Tight end contracts generally do not approach the same financial level as elite cornerback deals, which can make finding common ground easier. There is also the sense that Washington genuinely enjoys his role within the organization and sees Pittsburgh as the right place for his future. His participation throughout offseason activities has only reinforced the perception that both sides would like to continue their partnership. As a result, there is growing speculation that Washington could become the next significant extension completed by the Steelers. If that happens, it would further solidify the core group of young talent that the organization is trying to build around moving forward. And then comes perhaps the biggest question of all. What exactly are the Steelers entering this season? Are they legitimate Super Bowl contenders? Are they simply playoff contenders? Or are they something in between? That debate continues to divide the fan base. On one side, there are those who look at the roster and see enough veteran talent, defensive playmakers, and established leadership to believe this team can compete with anyone if things break the right way. On the other side, there are still significant questions that have not yet been answered. Can the offense consistently produce at a championship level? Will the defense return to being one of the NFL's most dominant units? Can the new pieces fit together quickly enough to maximize the team's potential? Those questions remain unresolved, and that is why many observers view Pittsburgh as a team that falls into a unique category. Not a rebuilding team, not a proven Super Bowl favorite, but a team with enough talent to become dangerous if key developments unfold in the right direction. There is undeniable potential throughout this roster. The edge rushing group may be among the best in football. The secondary continues to develop. Young players are emerging. Veterans remain in place. The front office is making aggressive moves that signal confidence in the team's ability to compete. Yet potential alone does not win championships. Execution does. And that is what will make this upcoming season so fascinating to watch. The Steelers appear to have assembled a roster capable of surprising a lot of people. Whether that ultimately results in a deep playoff run or something even greater will depend on how quickly these pieces come together once the games begin. And when you look closely at everything discussed throughout minicamp, a common theme keeps appearing over and over again. The Steelers are trying to balance winning right now with preparing for the future at the exact same time. That is not an easy task in today's NFL. Many teams choose one direction or the other. Some organizations go all in for immediate success, sacrificing future flexibility in the process. Others focus almost entirely on long-term development and accept short-term growing pains. Pittsburgh appears determined to do both. You can see it in the way the roster is currently constructed. Veterans continue to occupy major leadership roles throughout the locker room, while younger players are being developed behind them. The organization is not simply thinking about this season. It is also thinking about what the roster will look like 2 or 3 years from now. That becomes especially clear when discussing the outside linebacker position. The presence of TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and Jack Sawyer gives Pittsburgh multiple layers of talent at one of the most important positions in modern football. The immediate focus is obviously on what that group can accomplish together this season, but there is also a clear long-term plan taking shape. Herbig's continued development is a major piece of that vision. The confidence surrounding him has grown substantially because of the production he has already demonstrated. When a young player consistently delivers despite playing fewer snaps than many of his peers, people inside and outside the organization take notice. That production is one reason why so many discussions now revolve around what Pittsburgh's pass rush could become rather than what it currently is. If Watt experiences the bounce-back season many are predicting, and if Herbig continues progressing at his current pace, opposing offensive coordinators could find themselves facing difficult decisions every week. Do they dedicate additional resources to slowing Watt? Do they focus on Herbig's speed off the edge? Do they account for Highsmith's presence? The challenge is that focusing too heavily on one threat can create opportunities for another. That is exactly why depth matters so much. Throughout an NFL season, injuries happen. Rotations become important. Players wear down. Teams that can continue generating pressure regardless of who is on the field often separate themselves from the competition. The Steelers believe they may have the personnel necessary to accomplish that. At the same time, there is still a great deal that remains unknown. The upcoming season will answer questions that simply cannot be resolved during off-season practices. Can the defense consistently stop the run at a higher level? Will the new defensive structure produce better results results? Can the young players continue taking significant steps forward? And perhaps most importantly, can the Steelers transform their potential into actual results once meaningful games begin? Those are the questions that will define the months ahead. What is clear right now is that there is no shortage of optimism surrounding several of Pittsburgh's most important players. There is belief that Watt can return to elite production. There is excitement surrounding Herbig's future. There is confidence in the value of keeping Highsmith on the roster for another season. And there is growing anticipation regarding future extensions involving cornerstone players such as Joey Porter Jr. and Darnell Washington. All of those storylines are connected. Together, they paint a picture of an organization that believes it has assembled a roster capable of competing at a high level while continuing to build toward the future. Whether that confidence is justified will ultimately be determined on the field. But as training camp approaches and expectations continue to rise, one thing is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The Steelers believe they have far more talent than many people outside the organization are willing to acknowledge. If that happens, opposing offenses may find it much harder to dedicate constant attention to Watt alone. For years, Steelers fans have watched offenses chip him, double team him, and build entire protection plans around stopping him. But with multiple dangerous edge rushers on the field simultaneously, that strategy becomes much more difficult to execute consistently. The conversation then shifts to another major topic that continues to generate debate among Steelers fans: Alex Highsmith's future. Despite occasional speculation, there appears to be very little reason for Pittsburgh to consider moving Highsmith before the season begins. Everything about the organization's recent decisions suggests that the Steelers view themselves as a team trying to win right now. Veteran players remain a major part of the roster, and the front office has shown no indication that it is preparing for a rebuild. In fact, one of the greatest strengths of the entire defense may be the three-man edge rushing group of Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig. Few teams can match that level of depth and versatility at outside linebacker. The financial situation also favors keeping the trio together for another season. With Nick Herbig still providing value relative to his contract situation, Pittsburgh has the flexibility to maintain one of the deepest pass rushing groups in football. Rather than making a move now, the more logical scenario would be allowing this group to compete together throughout the season before addressing future roster decisions later. That brings us directly to Nick Herbig, whose emergence continues to be one of the most fascinating developments on the roster. The confidence surrounding Herbig is growing rapidly. His production has generated significant excitement, especially considering that he has often produced at a high level without receiving the same volume of snaps as other top pass rushers around the league.